Hi everyone, we all are back again to my video series. Today I am going to discuss SLFRS 16 or IFRS 16 leases. This is an important topic in your examination and it is not that complicated, but you have to understand the basic principles underlying that. Then you can handle the problems. If you are not studying it that well or understanding that in deep depth or the insights of it, you are in trouble because you don't know what to take, what amounts to take, to where and when. Those are the things that you have to. Then to begin with, I would like to explain what is a lease. There are two people involved. One is the legal owner of the asset, other one who like to use the asset. He doesn't have any finances to purchase it outright. So he will go and sign an agreement with this person to hire the asset for a period of term for a consideration to be paid periodically to that owner. The owner of the asset is called the lessor. The hirer, whoever is hiring the asset, is called the lessee. So basically there are two types of leases. One is a finance lease, other one is an operating lease. Finance lease is defined in your standard as the transfer of most of the risk and rewards to the lessee. That means almost he is owning the asset. That means he is directing the use, he is controlling the asset, he is getting the economical benefit out of it. So he is the lessee. So he is an in substance owner. So the standard says that he has to be treated as an owner for the financial statement basis, for the accounting purposes. And this lease accounting has to be done in accordance with the standard. The previous standard, that is LKAS 17 or IAS 17 leases, allowed the lessee to select between finance leases and operating leases. The difference between these two leases are, finance leases, you declare the asset or you recognize your asset in your balance sheet. Operating leases, you need not to, you treat it as a higher rental and pay the rental, you need not to recognize in lessee's books. Lessor accounting is different. He will recognize the asset. But lessee has the option of not recognizing the asset and recognizing the asset. If it is a finance lease, he has to recognize. If it is an operating lease, he need not to recognize. So for some manipulation happen, because if you see the asset turnover ratio, if you take the asset turnover ratio, sales divided by the total assets, suppose the sales is 1 million and the assets are 5 million. The assets turnover ratio is 20%. The same 1 million is achieved by the assets 4 million. You mean 25%. That means your asset turnover ratio goes up. So for the users, the entities can show a higher asset turnover ratio, therefore that they can attract the investors. For this purpose, most of the entities, there are a lot of aero industries, airport, all the big industries selected the option of operating leases and not recognize the assets in the balance sheet. There were so many off balance sheet finances, more than $365 billion. So this was a headache for IASB. Then IASB thought, no, this situation has to be corrected, and SLFRS 16 or IFRS 16 was born. This was introduced in 2016. This was introduced in 2016, and it removed the choice for the lessee to select finance or operating leases, because IAS 17, the previous standard, gave subjective decisions for the entities to take, and they were arguing, no, this is not a finance lease, this is an operating lease. So IFRS 16 or SLFRS 16 said, no, there is no choice for lessees. You have to declare all the assets. Lessee has to recognize all the assets on balance sheet, except two exemptions. One is a low value asset, other one is a short term lease if it is less than 12 months without a purchase option. I will discuss that in another video, otherwise the time won't permit. So the leases, this is the history of IFRS 16 or SLFRS 16. So now lessees has no choice. Mostly they had to select, they have an election, but 90% they had to disclose or recognize the assets in the balance sheet. There is an anomaly or discrepancy. Sometimes lessor as well as lessee will recognize the asset. This is subject to a debate. But in future, how IASB is going to handle this, we don't know. But at the moment, it's like this. Lessees are asked to declare the assets or recognize the assets. How do they recognize? So the lease or no lease decision has to be taken. You have to, if there is an agreement for lease, for accounting purposes, you have to make sure, according to SLFRS 16, is there a lease or no lease? That's a major decision, because it's on balance sheet or off balance sheet decision. For that, there are certain checkpoints the standard has given. For a lease to be effective, there should be an identified asset. An asset should be specifically identified. That means this building, assessment number is so much. Motor vehicle, this is the registration number, this is the specified asset. So that there should be an identified asset. These identified assets depends on the substitution rights of the supplier. Supplier may be able to have a right to substitute the assets as an EV wants. If he has a substitution right, then you have no identified asset. Because today you will have one, tomorrow you will have another one, supplier has the right to substitute that. If he has the substitution right, substantive substitution. What is substantive? That means even if he has a substitution right, he should be able to exercise that. Whether he has the practical ability to substitute. Though he has a substitution right and don't have the practical ability to substitute, then there will be a lease. Because the asset is identified. Maybe for some certain reason, there can be so many examples. For example, the asset is a lorry, and the lorry is parked at the lessee's place. It is about 1,000 kilometers away. He won't be able to substitute it, even if he has the right. He doesn't have the practical ability. He may not have the finances. His cost may be high to substitute. He won't get the economical benefits. Not only substitution, the supplier should benefit economically if he is substituting the asset. Those are two requirements in the standard. Then the directing the use of the asset. Who takes the decisions about the assets? Whether the supplier or the lessee. Who decide what goods to transport, when to transport, whether to keep the asset in lessee's premises. All these matters to decide whether there is a lease or no lease. So there should be an identified asset. To be an identified asset, you have to make sure that the substitution rights, whether the supplier has or no. If he doesn't have a substitution right, then there is an identified asset. Even if there is an identified asset, who direct the use of the asset and whether the economical benefits is substantially or fully obtained by the lessee, then there is a lease. If there is a lease, then you have to recognize the asset. So, how do you recognize the asset? You debit right of the use asset and at the same time you credit the liability, lease liability. What is a lease liability? Actually, lease liability is the present value of the lease payments, rental plus the other payments of the right of the use asset. Generally, the present value of the lease payments should equal the fair value of the asset. Fair value of the lease asset. So, the rate, the discount rate implicit is that it should equal these two, the liability as well as the fair value of the asset. We will go into detail later in maybe in this video or another video if the time permits. So he has to, the lessee has to debit right of use asset and recognize lease liability. Then the right of use asset, what are the items that are going to be in there? One is the lease liability. That's the present value of the lease liability. The other one is the initial direct costs. I will expand on this subsequently. Initially, there can be some direct costs like legal fees, commissions and all that. I will give you a list, then you can understand. Then if there is any prepaid lease payments before the commencement or at the commencement, if you make any down payment to the lessor, that also will be taken into the right of a use asset. It's the cost of the asset. Then estimated cost of dismantling. Even in LKS 16 we should have studied this, the cost of an asset. If you have a dismantling cost at the end of the term, you have to return the asset or you have to finish the lease term. So you have to bring back the site into the previous form. So you might have to dismantle the asset if it is a power plant or something like that. So you have to redo it. So that has some expenses. These expenses is an obligation. It's a liability according to LKS 37 provisions for contingent liabilities, provisions, contingent liabilities and contingent assets. According to LKS 37, you have to measure this and bring the present value here. Add all these things and deduct if you have received any lease incentives from the lessor. That also I will expand what are the lease incentives subsequently. There can be some incentives paid by the lessor to obtain the lease by the lessee. So you can deduct that. That will bring into the cost of right of the use asset. Then the lease liability will be the lease payments. We will see what are the payments. Lease payments can be fixed, in substance fixed payment. That means it looks a variable, but in substance it's a fixed. So in substance fixed amount. Then the variable consideration, That means sometimes the lease is payable on the usage or performance of the asset. These are totally variable. It is not fixed. This totally variable, if it is measured or depending on an index or a rate, index means CPI. If the payment is measured because of the consumer price index goes up, inflation goes up, or if the LIBOR rate goes up, if that is measured by that, then it can be considered as a lease payment and the lease liability can be calculated. But if it is usage based or performance based, then you have to treat it as an expense. You can't capitalize that. So you have to be careful when you are making these decisions. One more point I would like to say, there are two dates involved in this lease agreement. One is a commencement date, other one is an inception date. What's the difference between these? Commencement date is the lessor makes the asset available to the lessee from the day one of use by the lessee. On that date only you can recognize the lease liability. What's the inception date? Inception date is earlier of lease agreement, when you are signing the lease agreement or the parties commit. Before the lease agreement, they commit. So whatever the earlier date that you can take it, on that only you decide whether there is a lease or no lease. This is at the inception, we have to decide whether there is a lease or no lease. So this is the brief overview of the lease. You should understand. Now I will do some examples and I will give you some details of these lease payments as well. Okay, now we will expand on the lease payments. Lease payment for the liability, we generally know that includes fixed payment of 2 million or 3 million per year. That's all we know, we would have studied in A-levels. But actually lease payment consists of fixed payments and in substance fixed payment. That means it is structured as a variable payment. That means it will say this amount will be paid only if this event happens. So you think that it is a variable. If that event doesn't happen, you need not to pay. But in reality, that there is no reason for that event not to happen. That means it will definitely happen and you have to definitely pay. It is a fixed payment, though it is structured as variable payment. I can give you an example. There is an operating line, production line. So it is the lease agreement is to pay based on the hours used. So if you pay, you have to pay $1,000 per hour. So the estimated usage for the year is 1,500 hours. But the term says, if the usage is less than 1,000 hours, you have to pay 1 million. So that is a fixed payment. Though it is structured as a variable depending on the hours, you have to pay the minimum payment. So this 1 million is taken into your lease payments as a fixed payment. Suppose you use 1,500 hours. So the balance 500 is a variable payment. 500 into 1,000, 500,000. So that you can't take in here because it can be 1,500 or 1,200 or 1,100. It will be more than 1,000. Up to 1,000 only you are bound. If it is less, if it is 700 also, you have to pay 1 million. So that 1 million is a fixed payment. The balance over 1,000, whatever you pay, suppose you pay 500,000. It is a variable expenses and it is not taken in as a lease payment for lease liability, and it will be expensed in the profit and loss as an expense. That's how the variable payments are structured. And the variable payment, if it is not depending on index or a rate, that is consumer price index, the inflation rate, when at the commencement date, if you estimate a payment, rental payment for 2.5 million, at the end of the year, the CPI has gone up by 5%. So your figure will change. That can be accommodated. According to the standard, that can be accommodated if it is depending on an index or a rate, something like a LIBOR, London Interbank of a rate, something like that. If it is depending on that, you can accommodate that in your lease payment for lease liability. Then the other one, residual value guarantees. What is this? That is, suppose an asset. The lessee guarantee the lessor at the end of the term. At the end of the lease term, I will pay you $400,000 for my lease. The value of the fair value of the asset will be 400,000. He is guaranteeing after using. After I use that, I will maintain that, I will do everything. So I will guarantee that your fair value when I am returning the asset, it will be 400,000, or if I have a purchase option, I will do it. That fair value. He is guaranteeing 400,000. But at the commencement date, when we estimate the fair value, the lessor find it is only 380,000. So lessee has guaranteed for 400,000. So the balance 20,000 is a payment for lessee according to the lease payments. So you have to take that balance 20,000 as a lease payment. This is the meaning of residual value guarantees. Then if you are certain at the beginning of the lease that you will have a purchase option, then there will be an exercise price. To exercise that purchase option, you may be having a price that agreed in the lease term. You have to pay that. And if there is a clause for any early termination, there's a penalty clause, there's an early termination, and the early termination is fairly certain, then you have to include that also. This is how you take the lease payment. So when your examiner gives you a scenario and give all these type of payments, don't get confused. Where to treat this? Where to take that? How do I treat this? So you have to take it as a lease payment and find out the present value and take it as a lease liability. These are the lease payments. So what will happen? Now we come to the implicit rate. That means your present value, at what discount factor you take. What is your discount factor? That is the implicit rate. What do you mean by the implicit rate? That is the rate which will equal the present value of lease payment plus the unguaranteed fair value. In this case, the 380. It should be equal to the fair value of the asset plus the initial direct cost. What are the initial direct costs? Sales commission, legal fees, related cost, any direct cost. So that should be equal to that. That is the implicit rate. Suppose the lessee is unable to calculate the implicit rate, then he can go on for incremental borrowing rate. What is an incremental borrowing rate? At the commencement date, the lessee should be able to get a similar loan for similar value, similar term, similar security and similar economic environment. If he can get a loan at what rate, what borrowing rate from a financial institution or any other bank or something like that. So that is the rate, is the incremental borrowing rate. Because this implicit rate is not easy sometimes, because the fair value may not be accurately estimated. The lease payments cannot be there, can be variable payments. So many things that he won't be able to accurately estimate the implicit rate, and he will have difficulties. In that case, he can take the incremental borrowing rate as his discount factor to calculate the present value. So that's all for today. I will continue to do another video for the detailed workings or the other areas subsequently. If you like this video, as usual, I am requesting you, please subscribe. Then you can continue to watch my videos and give your comments. That is very valuable for me. I can improve, or even your suggestions you can give me. So until we meet again, good luck, take care.